Let me connect everything so you can be heard. All right. Thank you, Reverend Year. Now trying to
Welcome.
and not just doing this, I'm doing a few things. Now that
Have a
goes.
great show.
Thank you, sweetie. I'll call in. So hey
All right.
everybody, hi
Have a good
Linear,
one.
how
Bye
you
bye.
doing? Hey, thank you, sweetie. All right, Nakiba, how you doing? Linear Bob. Oh, Jim Addy, bless your heart. I will tell him. But he's not going to be in at this time. Charles Mitchell, how you doing? Brian, Shirley from Philadelphia, Willie. Got one of our dearest friends up in Philadelphia who made her transition. The first black woman to found a commercial bank, Emma Chappelle, who was one of the founding members of Operation Push, of the Rainbow. She was the treasurer of the Jackson campaign. She made her transition a couple of weeks last week, and they're going to be funeralizing her on Saturday. So my prayers and thoughts are with everybody in Philly. That's like another home to me. But everyone, please like and share, like and share, like and share.
60 seconds.
Thank you so much. Like and share. And, let's see, because this is now blocking my face. Okay. Oh, boy. Oh. Okay, thank you, Reverend Yuri. Thank you once again. Did you get a chance to see
Absolutely.
the Aretha Franklin thingamajiggy docudrama?
No, I haven't seen the Aretha Franklin drama. I was gonna say the thingamajiggy because you're talking my kind of talk. So
Yeah, thingamajiggy. Well, because her family's boycotting it. I wanted to see it
10
just
seconds.
because people are approaching us about how they're going to do Reverend and people don't need your permission. So, and that's kind of where you are when you.
This is the Santita Jackson
Hey,
Show.
everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Monday, March 22nd, 2021. Hope you're having a great day. Rise, everybody, in Chicago on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. That is my home, as is AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. We're getting ready to have a ball. I'm going to have to get you the information. It's going to be a virtual ball, but I'm going to get dressed up anyway. Call or text me at 773 WCPT, 773-763-9278. GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to text me at that number. Why? I want to hear your voices. You're joining me over on the Santita Jackson and Friends page on Facebook and on Reverend Jesse Jackson's page. And hey, please like and subscribe the Santita Jackson Show. That is my new YouTube channel, and I need to have you subscribe. Michael Ann, how you doing, sweetie? Willie Holly, David Mursky, and Blu-ray, Linear Bob, and Shirley from Philadelphia, and Vicki Wells, and Kenneth Rush. And thank you so much, Linear Bob. My mother did have a great birthday, and she said so, which was like, what? I can't believe it. Oh, because my mother doesn't get excited about these things. Thank you so much for asking. We're going to be talking today about Robert Long. Who is that? He is the identified shooter in the Atlanta massacres, plural, because it was more than one. And he's been expelled from his church. What do you think about that? That's coming up in the 7 o'clock hour. Got a wonderful panel to talk about that. And you are the person who is at the table. I want to hear what you're thinking, what you're feeling about that. Should you be expelled when you're in trouble, or should you be embraced? And what is it in the doctrine of our church? Because our church in America is segregated. It's still the most segregated hour in America. That is what Sunday at 11 o'clock is known as being. You have a black church because the white establishment insisted upon segregation in the black church. And Richard Allen, a great man of the cloth, more than 200 years ago, created the African Methodist Episcopal Church in Philadelphia because they refused to sit in the back or in the balcony when they were worshiping God. So there's a lot to talk about there. And we are going to talk about the fact that did you know that Robert Long bought his gun to commit the massacres the day that he committed the massacres? But it takes you up to a month to get registered to vote in Georgia. Okay, you can buy a gun in a day, but it takes you a month just to get registered to vote in Georgia. Got to talk about that too. And then, of course, our latest on COVID-19 and good news with Reverend Dr. Todd Geary. So let us get to some of these headlines, everybody, as we are looking at a high today of 64 degrees. It feels like spring in Chicago, and that's what it is. Mostly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, a high of 58 degrees today, mostly cloudy. But hey, everybody, here we are. It's spring again, everybody, in Chicago. And in the Midwest and up in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Well, as restrictions drop, new coronavirus infections in the U.S. begin to rise after months in decline, everybody. And Oxford University and AstraZeneca reported that their vaccine for the world was safe and 79% effective overall, according to data from a long-awaited clinical trial in the United States, Chile, and Peru. Now, AstraZeneca is mainly distributed throughout Africa and Latin America, and of course, there have been concerns about blood clots, which is why in 20 European countries, the distribution of that vaccine has been halted, but now is going to be distributed in the United States. Because there is now a U.S. trial of more than 32,000 people that said that it is 79% effective with no serious side effects. So I think we have a lot of questions about AstraZeneca, don't you? Yeah, I want to know. I want to know. Now, President Biden's next challenge is what they're saying is vaccine diplomacy. The U.S. accounts for 27% of the world's coronavirus vaccine production, but 0% of the global supply beyond its own borders. Because we don't distribute our vaccines beyond the United States. Critics and allies alike say that is time for a change. So China has gotten a head start on vaccine diplomacy, sending millions of doses all over the globe, including to Latin America. Experts say it's in America's interest to compete in that race to vaccinate the world. And the calls to do so are getting louder and louder and louder. The president took a tentative step last week, according to this Axios report, offering around 4 million doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, which isn't authorized for use in the United States yet, as I just said, to Mexico and Canada. The administration has also pledged $4 billion in the global COVAX initiative and more still to help increase supplies throughout Asia, everybody. Now, Big Pharma is doing something interesting. Of course, the vaccines are free at this time for Americans. Well, guess what? Quietly, they're planning to hike the prices once the pandemic recedes. That's right. Uh, Eager to capitalize on the lasting presence of the vaccine, according to this Common Dreams report, executives at Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, and Pfizer, the pharmaceutical corporations that supplied the COVID-19 vaccines approved for use in the United States, are quietly planning to hike prices on doses in the near future once they decide the pandemic is over, according to this Intercept report by Li Feng. Wow. Although the rapid development of coronavirus vaccines made possible by large infusions of public resources, of course, that's Operation Warp Speed from the Trump administration, that has given big pharma companies a boost in goodwill. The public is still sensitive to drug pricing, though, and the reputational risk has so far curtailed their ability to reap large financial rewards. Well, I guess now is the time. All right, everybody, let us get to some good news from the pastor of the Douglas Memorial Community Church, Senior Vice President of Rainbow Push, theologian, preacher, lawyer. He does so many things, and he does them all brilliantly. Reverend Dr. Todd Geary, Esquire. How you doing this morning?
Well, good morning, Santita. I'm well. I hope you're well. They just gonna raise the prices when they feel like the pandemic is over. I wish I had that kind of influence.
Once they've decided, once they've decided it's over, it's time to raise. You can't make this up, Reverend. You just can't. Oh.
You know, there's a word for that. Do not try this at home. It won't work. It won't work. But anyway, we'll see how things go. Hopefully, everybody's had a.
Well, very quickly before you get into the good news, how is that ethical to you? I mean, you're a lawyer and a minister, and you're a theologian as well. I mean, how does that sound to you?
Well, it sounds a bit edgy. I think it would be interesting because public dollars have been attached to the development and the deployment. That there may be some vetting that the government may have to do before they set the prices, or what you may see is a return to the push that we saw from late Congressman Elijah Cummings, that we have better regulation on drug pricing, which is still an ongoing concern. So I think they have to tread very lightly because there are enough of us watching, and the beauty of it is that if that does indeed become the case, then all of us get to lend our voices to the members of Congress and the Senate to say that this is patently unfair. And so now's the time for us to regulate drug prices like they do in every other advanced country in the world.
Absolutely. So give us the good news, Pastor.
Well, here's the good news. You ready? It may not be all that great, but it's Monday, y'all. Good morning, Chicago. Good morning, Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, all of Minnesota. It's springtime officially. So the watery eyes, the runny nose, the itching, the sneezing is a sign that the season has changed. But here's what you got to do. Get up, get up, get up, get up. Don't hit that snooze. Put your feet on the floor. Feel the slightly warmer towel come back through your feet. And let's get going. It's going to be a good day. Go ahead and take a deep breath. Get a good whiff of life. Get that morning beverage, whatever your preference is, coffee and tea. I gave up coffee, so let y'all pray my strength. Oh, Lord. But we going to keep on pressing. That's what we do. I'm ready. I hope you are ready, too. I need to talk to you about something. Santita, I was thinking about this. This time of year in Lent, we're approaching Passover. Ramadan will start in a few weeks for our Muslim brothers and sisters. This is a time really of kind of inner reflection. We're all trying to get more grounded, I think, in our effectiveness. And as I had been doing some reading, Anne Lamott had written a book some years ago, and she talks about the paradox of life. Life is a paradox, and so it's at sometimes faith. Because the paradox of faith means that very often we live in that tension called the contradiction. And the contradiction can be frustrating at times. But let me give you some ideas of paradox that we see in the scriptures. The rain falls on the just and the unjust, right? We don't get a pass. When Jesus takes the disciples up on the side of the mountain for the first class of on-the-job training, Jesus talks about blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are they that mourn. But when Jesus talks to the disciples, Jesus tells the disciples, but you're blessed. Blessed are you when people hate you, revile you, utter all manner of evil falsely. That's a paradox. Another paradox, count it all joy when you face various trials. That don't make no sense right there. That's why I have to wrestle with that. I'm still in training. Y'all pray for me. But what I've come to learn is that in the paradox, in the tension, is very often where we find the blessing. And so the truth of life is in that tension. It's not either or, it's both and so we can't allow ourselves to lose our balance, because when we're living in the tension, it means we have to stay focused on the mission. What are you assigned to do? What have you been gifted to do? And who has God created you to be? And so Paul says in Philippians, be anxious for nothing. Don't be anxious. Don't get uptight. Don't lose your head. Stay true to your assignment. Keep your cardinal compass pointed due north and keep pressing. But the other thing that I think we have to remember is not only is life a paradox, what helps us to get through is hope. This is a season with all of the craziness. We have to maintain hope. That's what Reverend Jackson says all the time. Keep hope alive. I think he's been on to something, and we just have not been hearing him. Why? Because hope allows us to trust in the power and the process of God, that things will work out in accordance with the will of God and with the help of God's presence and power. But there's one thing. This is going to be the nugget. Get ready. This is the one that's going to help you get through. I'm going to tell you a secret to life. Your value is not in what you do. Your value is in who you are. And sometimes we assign value to our performance instead of assigning value to our essence. And it affects how we approach life. I'm going to say that one more time. Your value is not in what you do. Your value is in who you are. It's not in your performance. It's in your essence. And so here's the practical example I'll give you. Back before COVID set in and just disrupted everything, we would be on airplanes quite a bit. Reverend traveled everywhere. And whenever we would get on the airplane, the flight attendants would get in their positions, and they would always give us the safety briefing. Yes, the safety briefing. They would pull out that little plastic card and they would say, read. And I'm like, it's the same thing that I saw the last time. But the instructions are particularly insightful, especially the one that goes something like this. You all might remember it. If you know it, sing along. Here we go. Um, in the event of a loss of cabin pressure, 4 yellow oxygen masks will drop out of a compartment overhead. Reach up and pull the mask that is closest to you. Pull it until the cord is completely extended. Put the mask over your nose and mouth and breathe normally. Even if the bag does not inflate, oxygen is flowing through the mask. And if you're traveling with someone else who needs assistance, here it is, put your mask on first, then help the other person. You can't be of benefit to anybody else if you don't take care of your mask first. And so you actually have the responsibility, not just the permission, to help yourself. Here's what I want you to do today. I want you to focus on you. I want you to give some attention to you. I want you to love on you, because even though we live in the paradox, you actually are the priority. There's greatness in you. There's awesomeness in you. There's sweetness in you. There's gift in you. There's value in you. And even when you're living in the tension and sometimes with the tension, this is the moment for you to put your mask on first. I want you to have a great week. I want you to enjoy springtime. If you're having allergic response like I am, take those allergy meds. They do work. Ooh, they work. Praise the Lord, everybody. But just go on and do what you got to do. But whatever you do, don't give up. Don't give in. Don't change your mind. Don't bump your head. Don't do no drugs. Just live life well, because you are a gift. Have a great day.
Amen to you, Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary, giving us the good news today. All of these paradoxes, all of these these sayings that really don't make sense, I guess, until we dig down, Pastor Yeary. Until we dig down. Count it all joy. I mean, all of it. You really want to do that?
Mm-hmm. Look, honey, that's the one where I'm like, you're gonna have to. I'm gonna have to take that class over again because I ain't there.
Bless your heart. Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary, we love you so much. Can't wait to speak with you more
Love
later
you
in the
back.
week. There's so many issues that we need you on to help us to address and wrestle with. Blessings to you. That's the good news today, everybody. Hope that you've been blessed by it as I have been. Dr. Deborah Furholden, world-renowned epidemiologist up there in Michigan at Michigan State University. She is developing their School of Public Health. Indeed, she is the Associate Dean for Public Health. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. There is so much news to talk about with respect to COVID-19. Where would you like to begin?
Well, looks like now in a lot of places, a whole lot of people are eligible. I think this is an important topic. I think it's an important topic not just for the people who are eligible and will become eligible very quickly,
For the
but
vaccine.
also for the people who, for the vaccine,
Okay.
but for the people who have been eligible and still don't have access. Because for a variety of different reasons, there are still a lot of people who are stuck on the wait list. People who were in categories 1A and 1B who have not been able to make it off these wait lists. And while I do believe fundamentally, if people want the vaccine, everybody should have the opportunity to get the vaccine. I do believe that. For the people who want it, they should have the opportunity to get it as soon as possible. The problem is that we had a priority list, and we said that the people who were the most vulnerable, the people who were most at risk for a poor outcome, and the people who were most at risk for exposure would go first. And we haven't honored that. And so now those people will remain stuck on wait lists. While the whole, I always tell people, it's like Black Friday at Walmart. I'll never forget it. I went 1 year, and the year I went, they had flat screen TVs for $200, which back then was a steal. And they had DVD players, Blu-ray DVD players for $30. And when the people were lined up outside and it looked like it was all ordered and civil, as soon as the door opened, everybody just took off running and crowded their way through. And even though some people had been there waiting in line for 5, 6, 7 hours at the front of the line, I watched people all the way at the back of the parking lot. As soon as the doors opened, they just started running and pushing through. People got trampled and all that over some $30 DVDs. And that's what I feel like is happening over this vaccine. It's just not as um, physically in your face and confronting. That is exactly what's happening. Everybody is rushing in, and there's like now a bottleneck, and those who can have pushed their way to the front of the line. And it doesn't matter the people who've already been waiting, the people who've already been there, the people who we said got to go first. People just shoved them to the side, trampled over them, and I feel like that has happened with the vaccine, and it is a very good wake up call for us with all of the other COVID related resources, because that is what happened last time with payroll protection. That is what happened last time with enhanced unemployment. That is what happened last time with a lot of the other resources that got availed to both governments, to people, to businesses, to allow them to hang on during this pandemic. This is why this call to mandate equity is so important. And it's not just equity in vaccines, it's equity in all resources, all of the resources, and it extends beyond COVID. But I'll stick with COVID for now because that's the thing that's right here in our faces. That's the reason for all of the massive rollout of resources right now. Vaccine being one example of of those resources. This is why the mandate for equity is so important. Because in the absence of any law, of any legislative pool for fair play in these resources, our natural drift is to inequity.
Well, let
And
me.
inequity typically, yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, 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 because to your point, we're seeing now that the vaccine makers, the pharmaceutical companies, they are now quietly in talks to raise the price of the vaccines. I mean, we're hearing that these that they, people will need booster shots because, as you said, it's endemic. It's now this particular coronavirus, COVID-19, which will be COVID-20 or whatever else it will become. It's out here. It's in the universe now. It's in the world. So it's always going to be with us. And people who get this shot have to be will have to get shots. And I'm wondering, as they raise the prices, as we still do not have a national health plan, that to me creates another layer for inequities, because what if they raise the prices and they are out of the reach in terms of, people won't be able to afford them? What then? I've got 2 minutes.
Well, I mean, this issue of the fact that we live in a country where our health insurance is attached to our employment, and we have so much employment inequity, right? And it's not even a requirement that all employers provide health insurance and health coverage for their employees. It's just ridiculous, and we spend the most money on healthcare of any of the developed countries. Yet we have the poorest healthcare of any of the developed countries. The poorest health. Our people don't live as long and they don't live as healthy as the other developed countries. So clearly, what we're doing is not working. It's costing a lot of money. It's marginalized and left a lot of people out, and it hasn't produced this big uh, um, positive impact on our health. So, why keep using it? Why keep doing it? Why not try something else? I don't understand personally why we don't have universal health care. Health and health care to me is a right, not a privilege, but very much the way we experience it is a privilege. Again, I love how the sister on Friday said it. COVID is a snitch. COVID snitched on us. It gave us an opportunity to, if we didn't know what was going on, it told us the whole story. It
Yes.
showed us everything that we needed to see. COVID didn't do anything except show us what needed to be seen and said it real loud so people couldn't say they didn't know any longer.
Dr.
And we
Deborah,
now know health. Yeah, it's a problem. It's all a problem.
it's a snitch. Uncovered a whole lot. Dr. Deborah Ferholden, everybody. Please continue to send me your questions so that you can get your questions answered by this brilliant epidemiologist. Coming up, we're going to talk about why it is in Georgia it can take you up to 4 weeks to get registered to vote. But it took Robert Long just a trip to the store on the day that he decided to shoot and kill 8 people. At least he's the identified shooter. He has been accused. He has been identified as the killer of these people. It took him a trip to the store. That day he was able to buy the gun. But it takes Georgians 4 weeks, almost, to get registered to vote. Let's talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show. Dr. Deb,
Yes,
how are you?
I'm doing good.
Good,
I'm
good,
doing
good,
good.
good, 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 girl. Whew. I am just a little backlogged right now, but things are good. Things are good. But we're going to talk about it takes 4 weeks up to the way they're changing the laws in Georgia. It takes up to 4 weeks for people to get registered to vote. But it took this guy just went to the store, bought a gun, and then went and killed all these people. He literally did it that day. It's just
Yeah, it's unfortunate because a lot of places work like that. It works like that in Michigan too. You've
really
got a Michigan driver's license. If you have a Michigan driver's license, you can buy a gun the same day. There's no waiting period. There's no anything. You have an idea. If you have a valid driver's license, you go, you buy that gun. When COVID started and first hit, the problem in Michigan was you could buy a gun, you couldn't buy any ammo. People went and bought up all the ammo. I'm not kidding
absolutely
you.
no, no, no.
They
I mean,
bought
they've
all
done
the
it all over the
ammo.
country. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. You see it.
And I thought, what are y'all, what do you need all of the ammo for?
Well,
All of the ammo.
you know what it is. That's why I really I listen to right wing radio. I read right leaning blogs, right leaning news aggregation sites, because it's important to understand the thinking. People are stuck on January 6th and the people who raided the Capitol. Mm-mm. There's some people who have a through line on their thinking on all of this. And I think that we need to get familiar with that because, and understand, gun rights and gun ownership in this country and where it comes from and why Europeans who came here fight so hard to keep their guns. I'm not saying that, I mean, I'm someone who that's not my thing, but I'm like, I try to listen, because this is where folks are,
All right, sending Attorney Patil.
this is where they are. But let me go on and bring this down because I'm going to have to move on to this. But let's talk a little bit later today. Okay. Oh, girl, I've got so much I'm trying to do. Dr. Deb, you want to stay so you can listen?
Yeah, I'll hang out for a little bit.
Okay, please do. Attorney Patillo and Reverend Watkins, how are you?
Good morning.
Good hearing your
Still
voice.
working on getting Reverend
Okay,
Watkins.
no worries. Well, we'll start with Reverend Patillo, and that is going to be that. How you, Reverend Dr. Patillo? I'm going to have to give you another handle. How are you?
I got to stop sending.
60 seconds.
Oh boy! Oh boy! Oh boy! Oh boy! Oh, Robert Patillo, you too many things. Brilliant, 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 brilliant. Though you are that. I love it. And we've got Dr. Deborah Fur Holden, she wants to, of course, get her Robert Patillo smackdown today. So stay right there, Deborah, so you can so you can hear. We love Robert. Okay, everybody. Stay right here. Everybody, please like and share, like and share, like and share.
10.
Thank you. And go over to my YouTube page, the Santita Jackson Show page, and like and subscribe. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Monday, March 22nd, 2021. It's 33 after the hour, and it's wonderful to be with you on the Santita Jackson Show. Been talking about COVID-19, gotten some good news, and let's talk about at the top of the hour why Robert Long, the identified shooter in the Atlanta massacres, why he was expelled from his church. What do you think about that? But right now, we're talking about another Georgia story that we're going to see replicated all over the country. There are 43 states and counting that are changing their voting laws to make it more difficult for you to vote. But something interesting we found out about last week's tragic massacre uh, in Georgia. Massacres, because went to a couple of salons and killed people. Robert Aaron Long, 21-year-old young man. Well, he shot 9 people. He killed 8 people and 6 Asian women. And of course, people are standing in solidarity with the Asian American community, the AAPI community, uh, against this rising tide of violence that they're having to endure in the United States and all around the country as they are being blamed unfairly, unfortunately, falsely for this COVID-19 pandemic and just racism, which is something that they live with every day. But now we find that Robert Aaron Long, the identified shooter in these massacres, that he bought his gun the same day that he committed these killings, that he is alleged to have committed these murders. Um, and it takes you now up to 4 weeks to get registered to vote in Georgia. What is up with that? Call me or text me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Now, if it can take 4 weeks to get registered to vote in Georgia, because just what is ahead for all of us as we go into this 2022 voting season, which we are in? We all celebrated the election of Raphael Warnock, Reverend Dr. Raphael Warnock in Georgia, in particular, first black uh, senator out of that state, one of the few to come from the Deep South. Wow, how incredible. Well, guess what? He's up for reelection and souls to the polls. Here's a lot. Attorney Robert Patillo, brilliant director of the Rainbow Push Initiative in the southeastern United States. He also hosts his own show every Sunday at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on the iconic WAOK radio station. Talk to me. What is going on? How is it that this man
Well,
was able to buy this gun on the same day that he was able to kill everybody, allegedly, and then it can take you up to 4 weeks to get registered to vote? I mean, what is going on here?
Well, it's all about priorities, and politics is the question. The first day of political science class, they tell you politics answers the question of who gets what when. And when you have a gun lobby in the state that is able to push for even more rights, particularly when it comes to gun ownership. There's many people in the state that believe in constitutional carry, which is that you shouldn't have to register, you shouldn't have to have any special licenses, you shouldn't have any kind of background check, that you should be able to buy a gun the same way you buy a can of Coke in the state. So there are people who are pushing for that already. When it comes to the question of voting, they're no longer hiding the ball. You have Mitch McConnell saying that HR1 will basically destroy the Republican Party. You had Ted Cruz saying that if you allow people to vote, Republicans will never win an election again. You've had Donald Trump say that if you have voting at that level, that it will decimate the Republican Party. You've had the Speaker of the House in Georgia, Ralston, say that absentee balloting would end the Republican Party's ability to be a viable political party. A survey was done by Reuters last year that said only 29% of people in this country are registered as Republicans, and that was an uptick. After the MAGA movement merged with the Republican Party, it had dropped down as low as 26% of the country. So Republicans know that they are a dying political party. They no longer have the ability to win elections. If you are 17 years old right now, you have never seen a Republican win the popular vote. If you in a presidential election, if you're like myself and you're in your 30s, you've seen it happen 2 times in your entire lifetime, 1988 and 2004. Republicans represent 40 million fewer people in the Senate than Republicans do. There are 15 Republican senators that represent fewer people than the 2 senators from the state of California. So they know that they cannot win on the numbers. They cannot win on the demographics. They do not represent what the future of America believes in. They call themselves the grand old party. it's very difficult to be the party of the future when you have old ideas. And if you go to college campuses, if you talk to people who are millennials and Gen Zers, frankly, even many people who are Gen Xers, they are no longer in lockstep with the Republican Party and the party of Reagan. So what they've gone to is their last game, which is white identity politics, running on white grievances. If you listen to conservative media, it's always about how oppressed white people are by the fact that new people are coming in and getting rights. That's why they say there's a crisis on the border. No, there's not a crisis on the border. There's a crisis in American foreign policy. There's a crisis in our drug laws. There's a crisis in the way we do our immigration system in America. That this is a worldwide climate crisis that we're looking at, because if you look longitudinally around the globe, you can go from Central America and see people not migrating north. You can go to North Africa and see people die in the Mediterranean migrating north. You can go to Southeast Asia and see people dying in deserts trying to migrate north because there's a climate crisis destroying the tropics in this world, changing weather patterns. So the reason they go to white identity politics is because they know they are not representing the people that are going to be voting in the next several years, and they know for a fact that this is their last stand. This is like custard. If they don't win this battle for redistricting and reapportionment, then they will not be able to have a governing majority going forward. And this is why they are fighting tooth and nail nationwide to be able to bring down the system of protecting the rights of minorities to vote, because they have given up on the idea of trying to recruit new people into the party. You might get a Candace Owens and a Diamond and Silk here and there, but for the most part, black folks are not buying what they're selling when it comes to this white grievous politics. You're not seeing massive numbers of Latinos. You're not seeing young people or women or the LGBTQ community coming over to that side of the aisle. So the only thing they have left to do is cheat. And so if you don't stop them from cheating, then you get what you paid for. This is why the Senate, particularly the U.S. Senate, has to give up on this filibuster idea, because we still are fighting in a 50-50 mindset, as if there are 50% of the country supports the Republicans and 50% of the country supports the Democrats. If you look at polling, 60 to 75% of people support most of the Democratic initiatives, things like the $15 minimum wage, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, universal health care, so on and so forth. And the Democrats are afraid that, well, when Republicans get the Senate back, they're going to treat Democrats the same way as when Democrats have the majority. What they don't understand is, if you pass voting rights, then you really don't have to worry about them getting the Senate back, because they won't be able to cheat anymore to win many of these elections nationwide. And you'll have an actual representative democracy that represents the beliefs of the American people, and that's a mirror of what the majority believes, not simply what the money special interest groups can push through. So this is why we see these things in Georgia. This is why you see these things nationwide, because this is the last gasp of a dying political ideology, and they're willing to fight tooth and nail to stop the majority of people in this country. This is the Tocqueville again. This is the tyranny of the minority, as they're using every lever possible to change American policy without having to actually appeal to the American people.
What does it take to get registered to vote in Georgia? When Reverend Jackson was running for president in 1983, you had dual registration. You had to get registered in your city or town seat, and then you had to go to the county seat. You had to go register twice in order to register once. And sometimes 3 times. You had to go from your town or city to the county and then come back to the town or city and complete the process. We thought we'd ended that. What's going on in Georgia?
Well, Georgia had actually made a lot of progress the last several Secretary of States in modernizing our registration system, getting all the way to the point of having online voter registration, which is still currently the law. What Republicans are attempting to do is, one, prevent same-day voter registration, which we know would help young people in particular, end online voter registration, have what's called signature match verification, which is what President Trump was running around the state arguing for absentee ballots. They want you to have a photo ID and a witness and also to prevent an excuse in order to be able to have absentee voting in particular. So if you're an elderly person who's sitting at home or who's in a senior care facility, or if you're a homeless person with no the finite address or location, effectively they'll disenfranchise you. That you will need to, one, have a photo ID. You'd have to have a witness. You'd have to have a social security card. You have to have a notary available just to be able to file an absentee ballot to vote. They're putting impediments in place to simply try to skim those votes off. So their goal is to find what the rules are under federal law and then push it all the way to the limits to make it as difficult as possible to vote on the state level, because by doing so, this allows them to maintain a political majority without having to have majority ideas or policies.
And this is happening all over the country, yes? This pushback on these
Absolutely.
voting laws.
There was a lot of progress at one point in time when they still thought that they could win the ideological battle. Now that they understand that is over and done with, there's not a lot of young people who are coming out and marching for corporate tax cuts. There's not a lot of women who are really excited about the idea of losing body autonomy. There's not a lot of LGBTQ people who are really supportive of the idea of not being able to get married anymore, based on what somebody they've never met says. So because they've given up on this ideological battle and trying to have policies that the American people support, what they know is that the only way that they have to win these things on the state level. I think they're slowly seeing their ability to control the federal government probably within the next decade or decade and a half will peter away. So the best thing that they can do is entrench themselves in state governments and then push for federalism, very similar to the Marbury versus Madison debates, and the role of the federal government in controlling states' rights, interposition and nullification. And this is what we're going to start hearing a lot more of these states' rights arguments that we heard in the 1960s about states should be able to control voting, they should be able to control social services, they should be able to control minimum wage, because it's easier for them to control the majority of the states than it's going to be for them to get a majority in Congress, and particularly to win presidential elections. It's going to become increasingly difficult without some sort of major political swing in the next 2 to 3 presidential elections for Republicans to find a governing majority coalition. 2024 is going to be kind of a bellwether election for them, so they're preparing for it on the state. When we look at things, often from the progressive side of the aisle, we look at things 2 years out. Sometimes 6 months out when we're making decisions and finding out. These people have been strategically planning these things out. There are things going on right now that I heard at conferences in D.C. in 2006 and 2007. So they plan these things decades ahead of time, understanding the demographics, understanding the numbers. They treat it just like any corporation or marketing company that's trying to do brand planning for the next decade of research and development. And they saw this coming and have been working towards it for years.
Let me go to Daniel from New Hampshire. Daniel, what's on your mind today?
So I agree with everything that the gentleman just said, except for the fact that the Republican Party has always been about lying to everybody. I believe they've always been a racist part. Well, let me take that back. The conservative movement has always been a racist movement, but they've always lied to their own people. Okay, I've called in a couple of times. I'm from the Carolinas, and if you go to the Carolinas, we've talked about this. The war of northern aggression was about rights and personal property, and a lot of these people did not own slaves, but the rich conservatives convinced them that they may be coming for our slaves, but eventually they're coming for your stuff too. Take a look at what they've done to women. They've convinced women, lots and lots and lots of women, that it's in their best interest to let old white men control their bodies. They've convinced the white working class people that as long as they're making a little bit more than minorities, it's okay that they pay more in taxes than their bosses. They've convinced, where to begin? They've convinced us that going through all these rigorous voting restriction, just like you said, and I think it's very powerful that in Georgia you can buy a gun quicker than you can vote. And white people in the South believe that this is okay because there's voter fraud. It can't be proven. It's not proven. It's like what 1/1000th of a % of voters commit fraud.
Well, you're more
I
likely
mean,
to be struck by
it's not.
lightning than to commit voter
You're more
fraud.
likely to be struck by
That
lightning.
has been
But
proved.
God forbid we let Americans vote in a democracy.
Mhm. Well, in a republic, we have elements of a democracy, Daniel, and I think
Touche.
that's
Yes,
why.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
No, no, no. I mean, you and I are dancing with each other. We're not. This is not a game of swordsmanship. At the end of the day, we're trying to really move this constitutional republic into democracy, and it's going to take a lot of work on our part. So, stay right there, Attorney Patillo. What do you think of what Daniel's been saying?
Oh, Daniel's very, very much correct, and I think we have to understand who we're actually battling against. And when we talk about this gun issue, we're talking about several different gun issues. There are various reasons that people want liberal gun laws. I like liberal gun laws because I think they're pretty much pointless. Once you do a little research, you can make a gun in your garage. And after that, it's not really that difficult. It'll never be registered. So I think gun laws, by their very nature, are pretty silly. But what these people are doing is they're saying we need to be able to stack up on weaponry sufficient enough to launch an insurrection against the government. They are talking about guerrilla warfare to stop a tyrannical regime from coming in and oppressing them. They've literally been preparing for the last century for a civil war that they expect to come, not North versus South, but red versus blue, where they believe that as they say, a tyrannical federal government, or will come in, that use Ruby Ridge as an example, they use Waco, Texas as an example, Branch Davidians, Michigan militia, that has transformed into the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and other organizations. But they're having a whole different political conversation than we are. We are talking about health care, student loan debt, minimum wage, those sorts of things. They're talking about defending Western civilization from the hordes, keeping our values, those sorts of things. They're fighting a whole different war than we're fighting. I think it's important to be cognizant of what they're actually talking about, and despite the fact that it's a minority position, they're talking about going into the bushes and mountains and fighting this government and then separating away. We have the Texas movement right now, which 5 years ago seemed like a bunch of insane people, but now they have major corporate donorship. They have millions of dollars in lawyers and are really trying to have Texas succeed from the nation. So it's a very dangerous place that we're in. So we have to be cognizant of what a angry, armed, and motivated minority group in America can be, specifically when they're used to being in power for the last 500 years, and suddenly they have that taken away from them. That's what we see with many of these mass shooters, these white murderers, that if we read their writings and their social media posts, they feel that they have had the grand old party, the Leave It Beaver America snatched from under them, and they don't know how to handle women being in charge of things. They don't know how to handle having to respect minority rights. They don't know how to handle other people having input in their government. And I think that moment when Barack and Michelle and Sasha and Malia and Bo walked into that White House, it accelerated all of these things. So we have to work on putting those fires out.
And at the same time, remember the economy had collapsed. So they had also realized, even as America begins to look like the world, that they had also, I think, more and more beginning to see that at the origins, at the founding of the republic, they were never really included. They have been lied to. And I think we're beginning to see more and more and more of that. It's beyond, I think, white supremacy is an element of it, but really understanding the true structure of this system is really, really stuck in the craw of a lot of people. Let me get Earl from Hyde Park. Earl, what's on your mind?
You all understand too that you have a wonderful business model.
Oh, he's brilliant.
I wanted to just say I kind of, I agree with the body of work that he's putting out here completely. But the only difference that I'm going to draw on is that for a simple matter of conversing and stuff, I would say that they just want to have an apartheid state like they did in South Africa. That kind of explains the golden mission of the Republican Party without doing all of the facts and information that he put on. Because we have a society that likes a short, little sound bites to make opinions by. And the other thing that I was concerned about is the Republican Party realizes that they don't have to win all of the votes. They just need to have a strong coalition with the Latinos. And if you saw in Texas, they won a lot of Latino votes, and in Florida, they won a lot of Latino votes. So, with a small moderation of their rhetoric, they would have won possibly this election if Trump had done a better job on the vaccines and his rollout and protection of the vaccines. That's what I believe. So those were the three things I wanted to put forward: apartheid, a coalition with Latino voters, and like the other guys are saying, they have a good deal of lying and rhetoric going on. But thank you for taking my call.
Thank you, Mr. Earl. It's always a joy to hear your voice. I see Attorney Robert Patillo. Of course, he hosts his own show on WAOK every Sunday from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time, 12 to 3 Central Standard Time. And of course, that is 10 to 1 for you, Bab, and Carol out there on the left coast. And it's 11 to 2 for you, Michael Ann. What is I guess I'm really trying to see where we go from here. What should be the plan? Uh, Reverend, excuse me, well, you have a ministerial zeal for sure, but Attorney Robert Patillo, help me to understand the plan, because I think that you made the point that, Reverend Jackson says, my dad says to me, he was speaking to me as a dad, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Baby, you always have to have a plan. And Republicans have a plan. And not just Republicans, but those in power. Because people in power, Robert Patillo, they're not partisan. They really aren't. They're not Republican. They're not Democrat. They're power. And I just need this done. I need these tax cuts. I need I need these breaks. I need to be able to move from continent to continent, and observe no borders, and make my money. What should we be doing in service of 2022 and 2024 about our vote? It should not take a month for you to get registered to vote. And if it's happening in Georgia, it can happen every place else, Attorney Patillo.
What people have to remember is that after Obama was elected in 2008, Republicans went on a campaign of subterfuge while we were, still celebrating at the Capitol, doing documentaries, singing songs, those sorts of things. Republicans decided to entrench themselves in state capitals, and during the course of the Obama era, that decade or so after he was elected, Democrats lost 1,044 state and local elections nationwide. Republicans started organizing all the way down to the county.
Wait, no. How did that happen? How did that happen? Because see, until we examine how that happened, we're not going to be able to get through this. We got 2 minutes. They're yours.
All right, there were a couple ways that happened. One, white resentment at the Obama election. Two, Democrats who were afraid to govern. And when you start breaking promises to people, you start getting people to flip. So when universal health care became a version of Romney care, you pissed people off. When black folks didn't start getting the policy prescriptions they thought they were going to get, started pissing people off. When Latinos did not get the comprehensive immigration reform they thought they were getting, you got people angry when the Lucy Ledbetter Equal Rights Act did not pass. People started getting angry when the Employee Free Choice Act didn't have the impact that people thought. Unions started getting angry, and Democrats stopped organizing. Remember when President Obama came in, the Democratic Party was in shambles already, and they started siphoning state and local money for the Obama re-election campaign, which made it very difficult to win on the state and local level. Somebody who ran in 2011, 2012 for office, it was impossible to get money out of the state party. So because Republicans were able to do that, they still have the power on the state and local level because they spent a decade and a half building that power nationwide. So we're going to have to focus on the federal government. We have to focus on the U.S. Senate. And right now, we got to start making road trips to Arizona, road trips to West Virginia, because Christian Sinema and Joe Manchin are the ones holding up the repeal or the reform of the filibuster rule right now. Because even if we didn't repeal the filibuster, just force a talking filibuster, where the Republicans simply had to actually stand up and feet for 24 hours like Strom Thurmond, then you can still get legislation passed. But unless we get those two Democratic senators to get on board with the rest of the caucus and break down or reform the filibuster, it's going to be impossible to get the voting rights Act pushed through, and Republicans will continue to be able to govern from a minority position.
The always brilliant attorney Robert Patillo. You can catch him on WAOK every Sunday from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time, 12 to 3 Central Standard Time. Coming up, why was the identified Atlanta shooter put out of his church? Was that right? Let's talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show. Attorney Patillo, you are absolutely brilliant.
Oh, thank you, man. We'll learn from you and your dad.
No. You can learn from Reverend. I'm present when it comes to you. You're an absolute genius, and I thank you so much for all that you
Oh,
do.
no problem. Anytime.
Oh, so thank you for so much that you do. But I'll reach out to you. Did you see the Aretha Franklin what is it, biopic yesterday?
I did not, but I will check it out.
Yeah, well, her family, they are protesting it. So I'm just kind of doing a bit of a soul poll to find out. Well, because guys, everybody, when you get out into the public domain, and we're going to see this. I know with my own father, they don't. These people don't belong to you, and uh, they don't, not anymore. I mean, you might, while you're still living, or maybe when that person or their spouse is still living, first pass you might get a say in the telling of the story. But after that, that's not the way that that works. But it was very interesting. It was very interesting. I think that if people do not understand her grounding in the church, and I don't think anyone has truly captured just who her father was. I mean, I guess the best thing I
Mm-hmm. The
could
great
think.
C.L. Franklin.
I mean, as great as Aretha Franklin was and is, the greatest singer produced in the history of American popular music. I mean, hands down, she is noted as that. When she was buried as CL's daughter. That's how big CL Franklin
Mm-hmm.
was and is. She is still CL's daughter. Yes.
What's funny about that is, I used to do an impression of a Baptist minister for years. That's pretty spot on when I used to think about being a minister. And so one day, after my father passed, I was going through his old records, and I realized I was doing a C.L. Franklin impression because I had heard his album so much growing up because my dad had recordings of all his sermons. That had just become impressed into my mind that that's what a minister sounds like.
He, yes, because that is C.L. Franklin. I mean, C.L. Franklin was to preaching what his daughter became to music. That's just
Mm-hmm.
that's the reality, everybody. So it's interesting. It's interesting. It's interesting. And I think I wish, and it's hard to really parse all this out, but to talk about the culture of the church at the time, because Sam Cooke and the Soul Stirrers could not appear in the main pulpits. These gospel um, cavalcades that you saw, they took place in the basement or off site because black people have always been so aspirational that we wanted high church, European classical hymns and such sung in the church. So, I mean, because even the great Mahalia Jackson didn't really have space. So,
Sending Dwight, Reverend Wilson, and Reverend Williams. We got everyone except Reverend Marshall Hatch. He keeps going straight to voicemail. Let you know when I get him.
Get out. I'm looking up now and see the controversy.
oh yeah, definitely. We should definitely talk about it. But I'm going to reach out to you a little bit later. Okay.
All right, sounds good. You have a good day.
Sending you much love. Thank you. Thank you. What a blessing he is. Reverend Wilson.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Reverend Williams. Pastor Williams.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
No, girl, please don't worry about that. What are you apologizing for? Dwight McKee?
How you doing this morning?
Good. Oh, you sound great. You sound great. It's great to hear you all. Okay. Well, I can't wait to hear what you all have to say about the church. Since the church is making a lot of news. Ooh, I'm so glad it's spring. I hope we don't get any snow before July or in July. Look, I have a stack of sweaters that I am taking to the dry cleaners because I'm about to start putting my winter things away. like like my heavy sweaters and things like that. But how is everyone this morning?
Well, thank
Doing well.
Oh, I'm so glad that you all are here. This is great. This is great. This is great. This is great. Did anyone see the Aretha Franklin documentary? It's going to take place over 4 nights. Did anyone see that?
I did.
I did.
Okay, just quickly, how did you all like it? Remember, we're on Facebook now.
Well, I thought that it showed some challenging aspects of her journey to stardom, but it indicated how she was focused on her gift and her ability and refused to let anyone or anything dissuade her from striving for excellence. I mean, when she said, it reminded me of you in many ways, Santita, in terms of I must learn how to do ballroom dancing. I must make sure I have correct elocution. I mean, she was developing herself and at the very same time overcoming some other situations personally.
Isn't that life? You never get it
It's
free and
life.
you never get it free and clear. I mean, but I think one of the things that we miss about Aretha Franklin, about Roberta Flack, about Sarah Vaughan, and I can specifically speak to Roberta Flack because I worked for her and because I understood her process. And they both, she and Aretha Franklin, were produced by Ahmet Ertegun, which the head of Atlantic Records, which is interesting. Um, they were self-produced, and these women, and this is where misogyny and sexism comes in. They were never credited with producing
60
themselves.
seconds.
Thank you. They were never credited with that. And Ahmet Ertegun had his genius. There was no question about that. But you followed Roberta. You followed Aretha. That's what the bands followed them. And that is something that we give Marvin Gaye his credit. We give Stevie Wonder his credit, and they are due that. But we never give these great artists their credit for sketching out what.
And I think they did a little bit of that
I'm glad they
when
did that.
she would go. She would go in the studio. She was clearly directing the band, and one of them said, "She doesn't read music. How does she do this? Yet she can direct us
But she but
Ten
each
seconds.
instrument."
but when they broke down the chords, she understood. She said, "No, the C major 7. You're missing a third
Yep,
here." Oh yeah, no, she was.
This is the
phenomenal.
Santita Jackson
Hey
Show.
everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It is 6 minutes after the hour. I am Santita Jackson. This is the Santita Jackson Show. It's Monday, March 22nd, 2021. Welcome to WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station at AM 950 radio. My home to the north in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I'm going to be letting you know in the coming weeks about a wonderful ball that we're going to have. I hope that you all will join us. I'm going to get dressed up. It's going to be virtual, but I got to get dressed. Come on, it's been a year, everybody. I can't wait. I can't wait. I can't wait. Call me or text me at 773-763-WCPT. 773-763-9278. Please meet me on the Santita Jackson and Friends page on Facebook and on the Santita Jackson landing page. I'm also streaming on Reverend Jackson's page. So many of you have asked me to do that. And please like and subscribe the Santita Jackson Show. That's my new YouTube channel. I need you all to get in there and boost up those numbers. So thank you so much. And of course on Twitter at Santita J and at the Santita J Show. Oh, so many places, so much. Chicago, we're going to have a high of 64 degrees. It'll be mostly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, a high of 58 degrees, mostly cloudy. Wow. Now, everybody, let's talk about Robert Long, the identified shooter in the Atlanta shootings, the Atlanta massacres. He's been kicked out of his church. Going to be talking about that in just a few minutes, but let us get to these headlines before we get to that. All right, everybody, let's get to it. COVID-19 is in the news, as always. AstraZeneca 79% effective. Of course, the distribution of that vaccine was halted in 20 European countries, but it's about to be rolled out in the United States. They have found that it is 79% effective with no increased blood clot risk, according to a U.S. trial of 32,000 volunteers across all age groups. The COVID-19 update continues as restrictions drop. New coronavirus infections in the U.S. are beginning to rise after months have declined. Of course, we're watching uh, the young people party in Miami and in South Beach. Indeed, in Miami, the police chief said that the party couldn't go any longer, so they now have an 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew immediately, as they're saying that large, out of control spring break crowds are cramming the beaches. And yet, black leaders are now reacting to the crackdown on the arrests that we're seeing. More than 1,000 arrests in South Beach. They're saying that they are using unnecessary force with these young revelers. And many of them are African American. I have to tell you, having gone to college on the East Coast, I had never seen this many young black spring breakers in Florida. We typically went to Virginia and certainly not to South Beach. It'll be interesting to watch this as this continues to unfold. And so let us go to um, President Biden's next challenge, vaccine diplomacy. What is that? Well, the U.S. accounts for 27% of the world's coronavirus vaccine production, but 0% of the global supply beyond its own borders. 0%. Why does that matter? China has gotten a head start on vaccine diplomacy, sending millions of doses all over the globe, including to Latin America. Experts say it's in America's interest to compete in the race to vaccinate the world, and the calls to start doing so are getting louder. So the Biden administration took a tentative first step last week, offering around 4 million doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, which isn't authorized for use yet in the United States, but it's on its way to Mexico and Canada. Okay, so we're going to see how that works, everybody. Big Pharma, in the meantime, is quietly planning for a price hike for COVID vaccines in the near future. Of course, to Americans at this time, these vaccines are free, but as this coronavirus, as COVID-19 and COVID-20 and all that it will become going into the future, as it is now endemic, that is, it is something in the environment, we'll never get rid of it. We'll be able to mitigate it, but not get rid of it. Well, now, as these Johnson and Johnson, these big pharma companies, Moderna and Pfizer, when they determine that the pandemic is over, they are quietly planning to hike prices on doses in the near future, according to an Intercept investigation by Li Feng. What do you think about that, everybody? It's costs no money now, but that's not always going to be the case. They are now about to hike the prices. Can't make this stuff up. All right, everybody, let's get right to it. Of course, we have all been shocked and devastated by the massacres in Atlanta. 9 people were shot, 8 people died, 6 of them were Asian American women. And interestingly enough, the mainstream media has not picked up on the fact that um, this young man who is identified as the shooter, as the person who killed all of these people, Robert Aaron Long, 21-year-old Georgian. Um, they have not pointed out the fact that it was reported in a local Korean newspaper, because many of these people speak Korean, because they are of Korean descent. It was reported that he said on site that he was there to kill Asians. Wow. Although he did kill a white woman, everybody. Well, now the fallout continues. His church, the Crabapple First Baptist Church in Milton, Georgia, has voted to remove him from the church's membership following an hour-long service dedicated to the 8 people he is charged with killing at these 3 Atlanta spas. The associate pastor Luke Folsom said in a prayer before a crowd of more than 100 congregants, quote, "Our hearts are filled with so many emotions, with grief, anger, sadness, with emptiness and confusion. There's so much confusion, it doesn't make any sense. But Father, we know this is the result of sin. It displays the total corruption of mankind." Wow. So my question for you is, as we're watching the Southern Baptists wrestle with racial reconciliation and all kinds of issues, quite frankly, I think the church, generally speaking, is in crisis. Um, they kicked him out. So let me ask you this: do you think that it's right to kick someone out when they do something bad? Is the church supposed to pull you in when you're in trouble or push you out? His church is blaming his sinful heart and depraved mind. Where is one to get well? So let's talk about this, everybody. Let's talk about this on the Santita Jackson Show. Have a tremendous panel with us to talk about this. And let me start with introducing, of course, Reverend Jeanette Wilson Esquire. She's pastor of her own church here in Chicago, and she is also uh, the head of Push Excel and senior advisor to Reverend Jesse Jackson. We have got Pastor Tisha Williams, who is with us every Friday. And of course, she is the pastor of the First Baptist Church of Bridgehampton, New York, the author of I See You, Sis. She's telling wonderful stories about great women in the Bible. You've got to get that book, I See You, Sis. We've got the pastor of the New Mount Pilgrim Missionary Baptist Church here in Chicago, Pastor Marshall Hatch. And of course, our own brilliant sociologist, Dr. D. Dwight McKee, of course, from the National Action Network and from Rainbow Push. We've got a lot to talk about today. Let me start with you. Um, because this is where we see politics and the issues of religion intersect. Reverend Jeanette Wilson, what do you see?
They don't want to call it racism because then they'd have to expel everyone, every member of that church, just for committing the sin. And then you think about Jesus' last meeting with the disciples, a dinner that he had, where there were those sitting around him who would betray him, deny him, and desert him. He didn't kick them out of the discipleship. He simply said to them, one of you will betray me. And each one was trying to figure out which one of us, Lord, is it I, is it I? And he said, the one that I dip with. Well, they didn't catch that. But he didn't tell Judas, you're going to hell. He simply said, go and do what you're designed to do. I think that kicking the man out doesn't address the issue. It doesn't help him to change. They put him out as if to say, well, he's not one of us. He's not like us. And that's not true. It's absolutely not true. It's that Southern evangelical racism that it permeates not just the Southern states, but it is all around the country. We have these separate meetings along lines of race, and they never preach justice. They never preach against the sin of racism. Billy Graham never marched, never challenged his following on the issue of race. And that is something that evangelical, many of them have not been able to do.
Pastor Williams, your take on this?
I agree with Reverend Wilson. I think one of the things that we have to remember whenever we're dealing with people are sinful by nature. I don't believe that he should be thrown out of a church because I'm of the mind that the church is a hotel for saints. It's not a hotel for saints, it's a hospital for sinners. And this is where we get mixed up. We believe that as people come into the church, we have the power to fix. We have the power to transform. We don't have that power. That is the role, the function, and the job of God the Father, Jesus the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I think they wrote in their statement, these unthinkable and egregious murders directly contradict his own confession of faith in Jesus and the gospel. Who doesn't wake up every day and contradict our confession of faith in Jesus and the gospel? You don't have to commit a murder to contradict your confession of Jesus and the gospel. We do it every day. Every day that we wake up and breathe, we contradict our faith in Jesus and the gospel, which is why Jesus had to come in the first place, which is why Jesus died for us in the first place. They profess to be thankful for the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ that offers forgiveness and new life to all who truly repent of their sins and place their faith in Christ alone for salvation. These are their words. And so if that is true, you don't kick him out of the church, but allow him that time to repent and get forgiveness. Because the inference here is that Jesus' sacrifice is in vain and that the Holy Spirit doesn't have the power to do what the Holy Spirit does. And so while his acts were heinous, this was an act of domestic terrorism and white supremacy. Kicking him out of the church, I don't see how that helps. And does it put them on a pedestal? Is my question. Are they disassociating themselves from him to make their image better? I think that's sort of my question.
What do you think? Do you think they are?
I think to some degree it's possible. I think maybe they're under some pressure to disassociate themselves with him, because now who wants to be part of a church, part of the membership of a murder church membership of a murderer? Um, yeah, so I think to some degree, yes. Mm-hmm.
That seems to be a little hypocritical to me. Pastor Marshall Hatch.
Agree.
Yeah, I mean, Pastor Marshall Hatch, Pastor Williams said, church
Oh
is not
yeah,
a hotel for the saved, but it is a hospital for sinners.
yeah, but it first has to be a church, and I'm not sure that the way that the white evangelical church, quote unquote, has functioned altogether is all that spiritual of an institution. I think what we're looking at is number one, a political reaction that their brand has been seriously damaged by its relationship to Trump, the white evangelical church. And so this is it's almost like an emergency move to try to disassociate themselves from somebody that they developed, that they trained, that they quote unquote discipled. And then I don't think we can overlook the legal ramifications that they might be staring at when the folks who have been killed, when their families hire attorneys, and those attorneys have to research the background of this individual and find out in what ways he had been radicalized by his local church. They, in fact, may be exposed to some legal liabilities. And so we see this almost emergency scramble to try to cover their flanks, and nothing about their actions are spiritual, quite frankly.
But I think that even the associating of this church, of these churches, of white evangelicals with President Trump, he wasn't produced by them. They supported him, as they have sometimes supported George Wallace, as they've supported other people, as they've supported, you know, racist policies down through the years. Um, I think that they were giving President Trump just a little bit too much credit. And I think that that's helping us to go past the history of a segregated church, Pastor Hatch. I mean, that's why you got Richard Allen, right, up in
Mm-hmm.
Philly, who said, "Now we're not going to sit behind you in church." So we're going to create the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Want to go on and create our own church, because the reason you have a black church is because the church decided to be a white church.
Well, and I think the other thing, Santita, as you know, and Pastor Hatch, lynching occurred after service many times on Sunday outside of these evangelical Southern Baptist and in many instances churches. So the church has been complicit on these issues. The Klansmen were card-carrying active members of many of these congregations and have never been challenged about their ideology, the racist ideology. So it's not so much Trump, it is an ideology that permeates and is reinforced when people attend these worship services because they're never challenged. In our churches, we challenge people about various sins, not limited to any one, but including this whole idea of racism. That is not something. There's justice is not preached as a matter of course in many of these pulpits, and so I can go to church on Sunday and never feel uncomfortable. That man didn't feel uncomfortable in that church with his anti-Asian hatred among other people of color, I'm sure. And this is across the country. It's beyond geography. It's beyond denomination. Their polity allowed this to happen. And so, evicting him, there's no legal reason that they evicted him. They did that as a show of, we're good people, and so we've gotten rid of this one bad person. The rest of us are holy and praising God.
Dwight McKee, your thoughts?
I'm not impressed.
Well, it really has more to do with who's doing the killing when they kill them, and at what point the killing is done. Is that they put him out of church for killing Asians, but Sergeant York killed more people and was given a congressional medal of honor for killing people. He killed 8 Asians and or 6 Asians, and Truman killed 60,000 Asians with a bomb, and he was elected the president. I mean, it really has to do with when you do the killing and who does the killing than it does the killing itself. You know, the reason that the Bible gave us the Ten Commandments is because we were the premise is that people are born evil, born in sin. And it's religion that actually transforms us and our values into the image of the deity that it represents. But in many cases, what happens is that we end up transforming those values, those precepts, to justify our own appetites and our own behavior. And so, unless you're dealing with the transformative value of the religion you represent, then people are going to be naturally evil. The reason it says, "Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not commit adultery," is that's the propensity of people to do unless something from outside come and stop them from and take them in another direction. And so, I don't think that that we should isolate is evil. I think that we should. I don't think we should embrace as evil, but I think we should recognize it as evil, and that all sin has all of us have fallen short, and all of us have sinned, and needs to be redeemed from our own sinfulship. You know, it's interesting that power does not corrupt. Power facilitates corruption. And what makes white supremacy so dangerous is that they have the power to facilitate their evil. But other folk who get in those same positions, whether it's Caligula or Idi Amin or Herod, who has the same kind of power, has the same propensity for evil. They can't put him out the church because it's not their church.
So, everybody, what do you think? Call me, text me at 773 WCPT, 773 Should he have been put out of the church? Should Robert Aaron Long have been put out of his church? Or should he have been pulled into the church, reprimanded, but healed? I want to hear from you. What do you think? Effie Rolfe, I want you to call. Effie, you need to call in 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. And of course, that is WCPT. GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to text me at that number. But let me find out from you. Let me just do it quick. I've got a couple of minutes before we go to break. Pastor Williams, if a member of your church, um, if if they committed this heinous crime, would you want to put him out, even with even if the members of your church pressured you to keep him in? To put
I
him out.
couldn't. I like the way Brother Dwight said it. It's not my church to put somebody out of. I don't have a heaven or a hell to put anybody in. I am very concerned about what type of work they were doing with this young man, that he felt so pressured by, or as and I'm going based on what we've heard, what we've been told, that he was suffering with such sexual immorality that he felt that he had to go kill people. And so what was the church doing while he's suffering in this sexual immorality? Were they trying to help him through this challenge, or were they continuing to preach fire and brimstone to him because he had this issue? Until he reached the breaking point. From what I understand, he was seeking treatment for it and things of that nature, but their roommate said that he was struggling with this all the time. So I guess, what was the church doing in the in-between time to prevent it getting to this point? That's what I want to, so that now it gets to this point and now you want to expel him. You want to sort of wash your hands of this situation. You're pulling a Pilate move. This is not on us. It's on him. This is all on him. I don't necessarily agree with that. Did you see the signs? Was anyone talking to him? Was anyone working with him in order to help him through this? So for me, I don't believe in throwing people out of the church. One of the things that I always say, similar to you, Reverend Wilson, when we have communion, Jesus knew what was happening at that table. He knew that betrayal was at that table, jockeying for position was at that table. All of these things were at that table. And you know what, Santita? Jesus stayed at the table.
Stay right there. We're going to talk more about this on the other side of the break. Call me, text me, 773 Effie Rolf. I'm talking to you, and Pam is here. I want to hear what you think. Should you be put out of the church when you do something bad? Just got to put it just there. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. You don't have a heaven or hell to put anyone into? How about that?
Well, there are some instances where people may be removed from the church for legal reasons when you have pedophiles that have been convicted and are released from prison and they return back to your church and you have children. Unless you can put the appropriate guardrails up for those children, you may have some issues with keeping the child. Particularly, I had a situation where the children were abused by the father, who was released from prison and came right back to the church and tried to rejoin and was on the ministerial staff. So there are instances where you're not doing it for political reasons, but you're doing it to protect members of the congregation. So, I mean, there's some issues that may require that.
Well, I think.
But you do try to get them into counseling.
Yeah, because to me, to me, this is all political. Pastor Hatch.
Of course.
Dwight. This is all everybody. You all. This is all political, and it is hypocritical.
Agreed. I have a question. I wonder if I wonder if we had just not had an election and Trump was still in office, how this would be different, if it would be different. Would they feel
probably would have
and emboldened
given him
this young man?
Giving him the congressional medal.
Well, exactly. I wonder how it would be different if he were still in office, because would they feel emboldened and empowered to support this young man?
Well,
I presently teach one.
Dwight, I want to get you in the phone so I can hear you clearly. We can hear you clearly.
Yeah, that's how you hear.
Go ahead, Mark.
No. Let me hear you.
No,
Dwight.
I didn't know.
Was that you, Pastor Hatch? No, it's not
Oh,
clear.
Pastor Hatch.
It's not clear.
It's not clear.
Keep talking.
Okay, Marshall Hatch.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, yes, sir.
Okay, good. No, I was just saying, I teach at one of these institutions at Northern Baptist Seminary, which is over 100 plus years old. Just joined the faculty in January. I can tell you, these folks are in trouble, and they're no longer really the kind of the gatekeepers of Christianity, or they do not have the moral authority to define, who is Christian now, and the brand is in deep trouble. And so, they simply just lopped this guy off because it was convenient to do. It's entirely political. I think all of us who are pastors, I've been a pastor for 36 years, nothing that I have not seen. And yes, we have put people out, so it's
60 seconds.
As Reverend Wilson said, these are communities. And so if somebody is a danger to the community, but that's not necessarily what has happened here. We know that this is a political move, and I raise the issue of legal exposure. I mean, they are scrambling, because there's going to be lawsuits all over the place, and if they are responsible for his radicalization, they are exposed, and I suspect that they are, and I suspect that those are the conversations that they're having. I don't think it's functioning as a church at all, and I don't know that many of these places have functioned as a church. If we're talking about the gospel of Jesus Christ, if we're talking about the values of the kingdom of God being at the center That's not the way these places function at all.
Well, I think that all these
Yeah.
churches are having a reckoning, whether they have black
They are.
pastors or not. Hey, everybody,
Mm-hmm.
welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. I posed a question to the pastors, and I want to give them an opportunity before I move on to the callers. Um, if you were faced with the choice, and this is Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820 in Chicago, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, up in Minneapolis, St. Paul, 773-763 WCPT, 773-763-9278. Robert Aaron Long, the 21-year-old, who has been identified as the man who shot and killed 8 persons in 3 different spas in the Atlanta area last week. Then he targeted Asian Americans, according to the local Korean newspaper, their little hometown neighborhood family newspaper. And it's interesting, the mainstream media they have not gone to them to ask them about what they heard, because many of the people who were actually targeted were Korean American. It's right. The person who we're beginning to see the family of the person who we're beginning to see on television was actually Chinese American. She owned one of the spas. And it's interesting. The person who is the spokesperson for her family is her ex husband, who's white. And he does not want to call this a hate crime yet. They don't. Interesting. It's a lot of little moving pieces here. But this man has been expelled from his church. They're saying, hey, he's got a sinful heart. He's got a depraved mind. We want to be clear that this extreme and wicked act is nothing less than rebellion against our holy God and his word. The shootings were a total repudiation of our faith and practice, and such actions are completely unacceptable and contrary to the gospel. You are also a professor. You are also training ministers, not just in the laity, but you are doing this actually in the halls of academe. Pastor Hatch, if you looked into your congregation and you found that someone had committed um, this act, would you put them out? Would you let them stay? How would you handle that, particularly if you had your congregants who were saying, "We got to get him out of here"? Pastor Hatch?
Years of yeah, can you hear me?
Now I can.
Marshall Hatch here.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah, in 36 years of serving as a pastor, there's not much I have not seen, including people who have murdered people, unfortunately. And at one point, I was helping people to surrender after having murdered people, and doing that in Chicago fairly regularly for a season of my life. So, everybody deserves a pastor. I can tell you that, no matter how guilty they are. Now, whether or not that person ought to be received into an ongoing congregational life, who may present a clear and present danger to other congregants, and may need to be incarcerated, but that's another question. So, I don't know what kicked out of the church really means, other than some kind, in this instance, other than some kind of political move on the part of the church to try to disassociate itself with the actions of this young man, whom they might be responsible for his radicalization. And I suspect that it is also a legal move on the part of the church. I'm pretty sure they're getting the advice of lawyers, and they're trying to disassociate themselves with somebody who might be, in fact, they might be responsible for the political views that he developed.
Well, you are the lawyer and the pastor here on this panel, Reverend Wilson. What say you?
Well, I think that terminating this young man from fellowship with members of a congregation, really based on the crime and the victims of his crime, it's clear that it wasn't. He's not just guilty of murder. He's guilty of a hate crime. And many of the states across the country don't have hate crime legislation. But in this instance, we know the facts are clear. It was a hate crime. And when Pastor Hatch says, well, was the church in any way enhancing the radicalization of this young man? I don't know anything about this pastor. I don't know the ideology of that church. I don't know. We'd have to do what they did to Pastor Wright. Let's look at the sermons that are preached. Let's listen to some of the messages that came from that congregation to determine whether or not the church perhaps encouraged this hostility toward people of color. I don't know. And putting him out is to protect the church from having a public image that they support possible murderers. He's not even been sent to court. He has not had a trial. And as Pastor Hatch was suggesting, perhaps if he were to be charged, go to court and get convicted, he may be sentenced to a mental institution. I don't even know his total background. They're putting him out of the church to protect themselves, the leadership of the church. I'm not so sure, unless there's some evidence that he's been a danger to members before, he's threatened other people. These are things that will come out, I'm sure, in a trial. I think that these right-wing evangelical, quote-unquote Christians are now facing a difficult challenge because they have espoused a gospel that's not written in the Bible that I read. And they have been pushing an ideology and messages to their congregants that are not healthy. It's the same kind of messages, and I keep going back to lynching. That's why I don't go to picnics, because the word comes from when they would pick a particular nigger to hang outside the church on Sunday. They would go to service on Sunday morning and then have a picnic and watch a hanging. How can you do that? And you just read the Bible, just heard a fire and brimstone sermon.
Well, now you know it's
And
important
I
for
go with
people to
the
know where the word picnic comes from. That's important to know.
I go with the Jesus
Right.
thing.
Right.
On these two commandments, love God and love your neighbor as yourself. Those two things, I can go with that.
Well, hold on, just everybody. I hope you all heard that because that's
You
where
know,
picnic comes from. And I mean, so
yeah.
much of our history, Pastor Williams, as I ask Dwight McKee and go to the callers, so much of our history is tied up with anti-black racism. But when you look at the Chinese Exclusion Act, when you look at oh my goodness, what has been done to the indigenous people of this land, I mean, just people of color have been savaged here, if you will. And when you hear picnic, I mean, and I'm beginning to hear black people who come from the United States, who are descendant of slaves in particular. We're beginning to talk more about the things that our grandparents and great grandparents and ancestors would not dare discuss. The pain, you know. I mean, the
Yes.
picnic, and I'm telling you,
Mhm.
I keep thinking about my father's mother, who would not look at roots. You could not talk to her
Mhm.
about roots. I said,
Well,
okay. She said, no, no,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. I don't want to be reminded of why we look the way we look. Don't you
Yeah.
dare mention it to me. Not ever.
Yeah.
we
My
have to
dad.
start.
Oh, I'm
We
sorry.
have to start with
Yeah.
hello.
Yeah.
Oh no.
No,
Yeah,
Dwight. Mhm.
we have we have to start with the premise that America itself is a hate crime. The country is a hate crime, and if you look at the history of how the country evolved and who was murdered, who was enslaved, who was in prison, the whole premise of the country is a premise that a special people who were endowed by God as his representatives on earth had the right to kill and enslave and plunder a whole continent. And they put a flag on it and changed the name of it and deified it. But the fact of the matter is, the whole country is a hate crime. And until we tell the truth about what the country is and how the country started is, we will always and we will march.
You know,
You,
okay, I can hear someone walking in the background. So, okay.
you, you know,
Yes,
Santita, can I jump in here
yes,
really
yeah, of
quickly?
course, of
Um,
course.
I was thinking just what you said about us knowing our history. You know, one of the things that Black people do and we do so well, we are the keepers of the story. I'm very passionate about this because when we don't tell our stories die with us.
Absolutely.
I'm a descendant of Sapelo Island, Georgia, which is one of the Gullah Islands. And I'm a descendant of Bilal Muhammad, who was Islamic on Sapelo Island, brought from the Caribbean in the States in 1700s. And just learning about the history and learning about who we are and how we've come to this place is so super important. And I think that's where we lose a lot of this. But in terms of the white supremacy thing, you know, anything, and then this church in crisis who is now scrambling, clearly scrambling, anything facing extinction is going to fight like hell to stay alive. And that's what they're doing. They are facing extinction and fighting like hell to stay alive. And so that's, I think, one of the things that we also have to remember. The power lies in our story, being able to tell our story. You're right. My dad grew up on Sapelo Island, Georgia. He's never told me stories about Jim Crow, about that experience in the South. He does not share that. A quiet man, certainly by nature, but has never shared that experience. And I can recall one time trying to get him to share it, and it was for naught. I didn't learn anything more than I did on a television documentary because of the pain associated with it.
And I
so
think
I
we have to
totally
be
get
honest
what you're
about
saying.
that. No, Pastor.
We do.
Pastor Williams, we have to start talking about that. I mean, my grandfather, the
We have
last
to.
time I saw him alive, he died about 6 or 7 months after I saw him. And now I look at this encounter with him very differently. It's like it's almost as if he knew he was going and he had to tell me about his World War II experience, about being forced to move to the back of the train, about having when they went to Auschwitz and Buchenwald to save the survivors, that they sent the black soldiers in, not only because the survivors at Buchenwald and Auschwitz and all of these camps would know that because they were black they were not Nazis, but because those places were laden with landmines.
Yeah,
and you would kill the
it's a
black
painful
soldiers.
experience.
Yes.
Yeah,
But
it's a
the
and I
other the
think
other
what we have
thing,
to learn in this season. I'm sorry, I just want to say what we have to learn, what I'm grateful for is you having panel discussions like this, because we are now the keepers of this story.
Yeah.
And we cannot afford not to share it, because guess what? 50, 100 years from now, someone's going to read, listen to, see our sermons, and they're going to know what happened in the world because we told the story.
Because we told the story. Pastor?
one of the things I think is very important for us to understand that there's an aligning of people of color. These attacks are coming directly. They came for the Native Americans. They came for the Latino Americans. They've come for the Asian Americans again and again, and they've come for African Americans. We are the majority. And when Reverend Jackson says red, yellow, brown, black, and white, all are precious in God's sight, America is a rainbow. And the white people in this nation have now begun to understand they are, in fact, not the majority, they are the minority. And those of us who are of color have decided we're not going to take and tolerate this level of injustice and oppression. We're not going to be colonized. We're not going to be made slaves. We're not going to be placed in internment camps as they did the Asians. We're not going to be marginalized. I spoke to an Asian pastor of senior pastor of Root and Branch Church Saturday about this, and he said, you know, it is because of Asian Americans that many of the immigration laws were put on the books because we had to fight for them. He said, we were in the internment camps. We were, before the migrant camps that we now see, there were the internment camps when they brought the Asians over here and made them slaves to build the railroads because they hadn't taken our slavery as far west. We were still picking cotton and tobacco. So, I mean, we do have to tell the story, but we also have to not think of ourselves in isolation. They took the land from the Native Americans, and every time they would make that one reservation seem to have some resources, they said, oh, well, you know what? Now that we found oil on there, you're going to have to move again. So then they move them somewhere else, and they said, well, you know what? There's fish there. We need you to relocate again. You know, it's like, really?
But Reverend
Yes.
Pastor Jeanette Wilson, who put
Yes.
who
Yes.
put smallpox in blankets and gives them to people? Come on, y'all.
Stay right there. Stay right
I mean,
there.
come
And
on,
so I'm
y'all.
saying we're together. God is bringing us together at this moment. We're gonna get to the beloved community, Dr. Hatch. It's
Absolutely.
coming.
Let me go to Pam. Pam from
Yep.
Chicago. Pam, what's on your mind?
Hi, good morning, Santita, and to the guests. And I just want to say amen, amen. Everything I'm hearing. Amen.
No, wait a minute. No, well, before you make your comment, why is this conversation resonating with you today?
Well, to start off with the question, to expel, expel the young man from church. That's one issue. Then the other issue brings to mind what is really being taught or the sermons preached in church. And I've called you before, Santita, and said this, that I believe that the white clergy is not doing enough to address, not only encourage love, but also to discourage racism and hate. I believe those sermons need to be taught every Sunday, or at least a part of the sermon addressing hate, racism. And specifically, Santita, we know here in Chicago, a large portion of our Chicago police force are Catholic. So I would encourage the clergy, the Catholic, the priest, to have a sermon that directly relates to dealing with other people, living with other people in love and harmony. And I've also written to the archdiocese about that. So I'm saying to expel this young man, that seems like that's going to make the church feel better, the institution, the business, right, entity of the church. But I want to know what was going on prior to his actions, and are there any other mass murderers going to come out of that same institution? Because they call them a lone wolf, but very seldom are they really lone, if you know what I mean. So I'm saying that just as they come to our community, and you know this, Pastor Hatch, anything happens in the Black community, you have other people coming to Black pastors and asking what can be done. This should be done. We need to, we're calling on our white clergy to do more, Santita, and I think that's a fair ask. We're calling on them to do much more because this is coming from their community, their churches. Monday through Friday, officers, you know, not all of them, but many law enforcement are committing mayhem, and on Sunday, they go to church.
And get
Their communities are in church.
And get blessed. And then you have a Cherokee County Sheriff Captain who says that this guy was having a bad day, looking at him sympathetically. Dylan Roof kills people, and the police take him to get Burger King Whoppers because he was hungry.
Get him a burger.
I mean,
the insurrectionists get a pass, and the people in Miami-Dade get SWAT trucks put on them. Mm-hmm. Right? The people who are down in Miami for spring break, they get SWAT trucks and all kind of flashbangs and tear gas.
I've never seen that before. Well, because I've never seen that many Black kids in Miami for spring break, because that is not where we went for spring break. Not when I was in college 30 years ago. That you didn't go there.
So what I'm asking, the pastors on there, let's implore the white clergy to do more. They have more of a role in this, and we know where the white evangelicals are. And I don't know if you can recruit them to do more, but certainly we've got to rely on the others who know that there's hate, right? Because Santita, and you can quote it better. Many of you all know what Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said about hate. The ultimate conclusion of the racism and hate is genocide.
Well,
and if everybody go take a look at that quote. I know I'm kind of paraphrasing, but that always stood with me. That if you hate me, then you're saying that I'm not worth walking on this earth, and that you would want to see me eliminated eventually.
All right. Pam has spoken. Let me go to Mama D. Mama D, what's on your mind?
Well, how are you? Greetings to everybody. Dr. King said we've got to get the language straight. Slavery is not the same as racism. And if you are in a country before it becomes a country, 1619 came before 1776. So we are indigenous native black Americans, snatched from our homeland like the natives had their land snatched. And so we are twin victims of the American genocidal Holocaust, and the only two that could be born in America and not be citizens in the land of their birth. Three things. First of all, I thank the family members that recognized him and turned him in. And if we did more of that, we wouldn't have so much killing going on in the city of Chicago. And I appreciate that. The second thing is he's in jail, so he's already out of church. But when it came to Reverend Wright, President Obama was told to denounce him because of his views. And so I think that what we need to stop doing is perpetuating racism by saying people of color, because everybody has a color. It wasn't right for blacks to be snatched out of the human family during the days of Jim Crow segregation, and it's not right for white people to be snatched out of the human family. So the whole wording system, people of color, is reverse segregation, and we ought to stop it. But in conclusion, I want to know what part does sex trafficking play in this? Was this young man going to these parlors for sexual favors linked with sexual trafficking, and is that really the issue?
No, I tell you what, he might have confused that, but the owner of one of these of at least one of these spas was very, very, very specific about the fact that they did not do that there. And if people came there looking for favors of the sexual ilk, they were shown the door. So I mean, even conflating that with all of these spas, because this was a spa, you had a married couple there who were together just having a spa day, because these were, I mean, massage parlors, they're spas, and so there's that. But I have to tell you, Mama D, and when you get out into the broader world, um, people of color, that is not an insult, and I hear you, and particularly in the United States, I hear you and I understand the context, but you have um, East Indians who are not black, but they identify with the black struggle. You have Kwame Nkrumah, who was married to an Indian woman. You have people who say, you know what, we are people of color and we identify with each other. And I can appreciate that. And I embrace that, even as I embrace my blackness in the United States context. Before we go, I want to give Tanya. Tanya, you should have told Lorraine and Stanley that this was your birthday. Tanya, everybody give her a big group hug. Mwah. Give her some love. It's her birthday today. Everybody wish Tanya some love. Love you, girl. Happy, 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 happy birthday. But I've got about, this is a dangerous thing to do with preachers. I've got about, 20 seconds apiece for each of you to give a closing thought. 20 seconds, Pastor Hatch, go.
Yes, well, I just want to piggyback on Dwight's point. America itself is a crime scene that has not been processed. And somewhere we're going to have to go to the root by telling the truth about America. Almost revolutionary. We have to start over again and restart the project.
Dwight McKee, 20 seconds.
Well, unless you believe you're accountable to God, unless you accept His precepts as the transformative influence in your life, we're all subject to sin and fall short of the glory of God. And so we have to, this is a reckoning. And at one level, it's going to be a reckoning for everybody one day. So it's a matter of, getting your soul right.
All right. Reverend Wilson, Pastor Wilson, 20 seconds.
Well, I think God has called us to search for the beloved community. It's our time, it's our season to come together across lines of race, gender, and geography. This is our moment.
Amen. Pastor Tisha Williams, 20 seconds. Your thought.
Thank you for the time, Santina. I'd like to use my time to quote the late, great James Cone. The cross and the lynching tree are separated by nearly 2,000 years. One is the universal symbol of Christian faith, the other is the quintessential symbol of black oppression in America. And though both are symbols of death, one represents a message of hope and salvation, while the other signifies the negation of that message by white supremacy. And here we are, standing at the crossroad of the cross and the lynching tree.
Amen. And remember, Dr. King said in his letter from a Birmingham jail that I have been disappointed with the white church and its leadership. Of course, there were some notable exceptions, he wrote. And he's not unmindful that some white ministers stepped forward in the fight for justice, but not enough. So we continue to pray for the members of that body of Christ, that body of the church, wherever you are in your faith system. We must all fight to create the beloved community. We must all fight for justice. And we, in our spiritual maturity, must challenge our spiritual leaders to do the right thing, the godly thing. I'm Santita Jackson. God bless you, everybody. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow. Hope I gave you something to think about today with this magnificent panel. God bless you. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. Until tomorrow, God bless you. Love you much. Happy birthday, Tanya. You all are magnificent. Is there anything you all would like to say before we get off of Facebook Live? Anybody want to say anything? Dwight? Pastor Hatch? Pastor Wilson?
Yeah.
Pastor Williams? Yes, now I can't. You got to get off. Got to stay off mute. Gosh, the delay. But Pastor Hatch, you wanted to say?
No, I just want to thank you for the quality of the kind of information you allow to go out over the show. It's got to be the greatest out there.
You are just sweet to me, and I appreciate it.
Oh, it's true. Yeah, but I was making the case because listening to Dwight again about the America itself has never faced the truth about itself, and the tensions I think that we now see have to do with their two competing visions of America, and apparently dangerously. A majority of the folk who call themselves white in America have determined that they are never going to live in a multiracial democracy. And the demographics are scaring them to death and what they're staring at. And so the only way that they can maintain the kind of power and privilege, they're going to have to suppress the vote and exploit, their positions of power and influence, and then, of course, poison the mind of the simpler white folks who really don't have a stake in the system, but have been told that they're white, and therefore that's what they're going to hold on to. So, it's going to be, as Dr. King said, some difficult days ahead. And we're going to see these tensions exacerbated because we have competing visions that, one is going to win out over the other. He's just going to end up balkanizing and becoming some kind of South African boiling pot of instability and racially charged politics, or we'll move toward what Red Wilson said again, that beloved community, something that is what we have not had before. But it's it's a divided kingdom, and it's going to be one or the other. And I think that's what we're really in the throes of a civil war already. Nobody really declares it necessarily. The tension suggests that we got these two competing visions, and so we're going to have to fight for the things we believe in.
Absolutely, because there were two competing visions at the outset. Will you be loyal to the Queen and to the crown, or will you be loyal to self-governance? I mean, that's been central to our struggle as well, and we've racialized it. But these things are central to the American struggle, to the American project. Pastor Wilson, Pastor Williams, Dwight, would you like to say anything? Pastor Wilson,
Rev said it all for me.
Okay.
Rev said it all for me.
Pastor Wilson? Pastor Williams?
Looks like Pastor Wilson's gone. Pastor
I
Williams
just
is still
wanted to
here.
say thank you so much for providing this platform for and allowing us to have such rich dialogue and discussion. And thank you to all the other panelists for all of your wonderful insight. It's always a joy. Thank you.
You know, you all are brilliant. And I came across, and I was thinking about this, a letter from a Birmingham jail, and then Langston Hughes, the great bard of Harlem, as Dr. King, really, as he referred to him as that, and he really was that. The great bard of Harlem, which was really a metaphor for Black America. He had a wonderful poem, Let America Be America Again. And these are some of the closing lines. Oh, let America be America again. The land that never has been yet, and yet must be. The land where every man is free. The land that's mine. The poor man's the Indians, the Negroes, me, who made America, whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain, must bring back our mighty dream again. Sure, call me ugly. Any ugly name you choose, the steel of freedom does not stain. From those who live like leeches on the people's lives, we must take back our land again. America. Oh, yes, I say it plain. America was never America to me. And yet I swear this oath America will be out of the rack and ruin of our gangster death, the rape and rot of graft and stealth and lies. We the people must redeem the land, the mines, the plants, the rivers, the mountains, and the endless plain. All the stretch of these great green states, and make America, America again. That is our charge, everybody. I love you. God bless you. Let us think that is let America be America again by the great Langston Hughes, someone born of our soil, someone who was black, who was Native American, who was European. You can't get more American than that. Whose family tilled the soil, whose family were enslaved here, whose family built this country. You can't get more American than that. That's it, everybody. Let us truly make America great. Let us truly make America, America again. Say it plain, everybody. Make America, America again. God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. God bless you. Thank you so much for being with us. And everybody, give Tanya some love. It's her birthday today, girl. I love you so much, Tanya. I hope that you have a marvelous birthday. Pastor Wilson, God bless you. I know she's gone on. Pastor Williams, bless your heart.
Yes, yes.
Just
Thank
love you,
you.
love you, love you, love you.
Love
Pastor
you
Hatch,
too.
love you, love you, love you, love you. Dwight McKee, love you, love you, love
Bless
you,
you.
love you. Dwight, I think I sound like Reverend Evans. Love you, love you, love you, love you, love you. I miss that man. Love you. Ah. I'm shaking my hands, Dwight. Ah. When he would come over to the house,
Bless you.
my
Bless you.
brothers, bless you, Jesse, Johnny, and Yusef would break into these impressions of Reverend Evans. And he said, where are these boys? Yeah. Ah. And then they start singing There's Room at the Cross. Wow. I will think about it. Oh,
Though
oh,
millions have come, there's
oh,
still room for one.
oh. You may be high, you may be low, 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 low,
Some
low,
are
low,
rich.
low, low. Some are rich. No, you gotta get through the lows first. Low, 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 low. Ah, but still, there is room. Ah, at the cross for
Amen.
you. There's room at the cross for you. Oh, at the cross where I first saw the light. Come on, I'm going into all of that. Love it. I love you all. Oh, these people who really who they shape our lives. They shape our lives, and I thank God for Reverend Evans and
Rich, rich
Rich,
tradition.
and I thank
Yeah.
God for Mrs. Evans. I thank her for being the lady, giving us really helping us to see what a lady's supposed to be. And you saw that not just in her comportment and how she dressed, because she was one of the most splendid dressers I've ever seen, anyone has ever seen in our lives. But when you looked at their children, they had 6 children. Um, you had Diane, Michael, Butch, you have Ralph, you have Claudette, you have Faith, and you have Stevie. They're all some of the most wonderful people you ever want to meet. If you get sick, they're coming to see you in your bed of affliction, whether it's in a hospital or at your home. They're going to do that. They're going to do that because they were raised to be those people. They were raised to be those people. And so I just thank God for that. But I thank God for all of you today. Thank you for allowing me to share time and space with you. And thank you for letting all my friends come in with you too. God bless you. Pastor Williams, Dwight McKee, Pastor Hatch, thank you so much for being with us today. Love you.
Thank
Bless
you.
you,
Love you
love you,
too.
bless you,
Love you.
bless you, bless
Bless
you.
you. Love it. Yes. I love my preachers. Yes, I do. Oh, love it. Thank you all, everybody. I'll see you and everybody. God bless you. Have a
All
great,
right,
great, great day. And
peace.
enjoy the day. Enjoy the day. Enjoy the sun. Even though they said it's going to be mostly cloudy, the sun is out right now, so enjoy it. But the sun is always shining. Sometimes the clouds get in the way, but always remember
Somewhere.
the sun is there now. It's there and it's shining
There's
on
a
you.
brighter day somewhere.
Come on. Hey, yes. Come on. I love you, everybody. Devin Andrakis, thank you for a great show. Love you, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Peace.
God bless you.